So I've got a lot of the questions written down here, the ones that you put into the chat earlier on today. If you've got any questions though, you can just ask them in the chat on Zoom, and then I can answer them if we get time towards the end. So this isn't really going to take much longer than half an hour. So the idea is that I'll just read out the question, give you a few pointers on that, and then we'll move on to the next. Okay, so let's get started. Is anyone else ready to join? Okay, so let's get started with this Q&A. So the first question is, what's the best way to recover from a lifting session? So when it comes to like a heavy lifting session, the first thing that I would sort of look at before looking into sort of like the finer details of recovery, we want to make sure that we've got adequate sleep, hydration, and nutrition. They're like the top three. If they aren't good, there's no point sort of looking at any of the other areas. Okay, if that nutrition is good, we're getting a good amount of protein, and we're eating in sort of like maintenance calories to surplus amount of calories, we're sleeping sort of 8+ hours a night, and we're staying hydrated, and we're drinking say 3 to 4 liters, even more, of water throughout a day, then we can start to look at other ways that we can recover between sessions. So we could look at taking ice baths, for example, or warm baths. Now, when it sort of comes to ice baths, there's a little bit of science around it to sort of say that it does help with recovery, but so are warm baths, you know what I mean? So it is all down to sort of like your general sort of preference, really. If you enjoy the thrill of getting into some cold water and you find that sort of useful for yourself, use that as a tool for recovery. If you prefer to sort of sit in warm water and that helps you sort of relax and replenish yourself after a session, that is a way you can improve your recovery. We could sort of look at massage guns and foam rolling techniques to do after a session or on sort of active recovery days. But really, I think the biggest take home here is that we need to make sure that the three areas are on point. So making sure that sleep, hydration, and nutrition is good before we start to look at all the other areas. So next question is, what's the best way to mentally prepare before a heavy lift? So this is a really interesting one. I think with weightlifting, and it's probably the same with a lot of sports, is that you can you can psych yourself out just before it's go time. Okay, so what I always say with my lifters is treat it as like a 3-step process. Okay, so whether you're just in training or you're at a competition, you're about to go for a 1 rep max, you want this process to be the same no matter what the case. Okay, so the step one is like you're sat down, you're going to do a few lifts in a second. Okay, and that's where you're going to have like a very busy mind. So you might be watching back from your previous lift of that technique and looking at it and analyzing it compared to what you are aiming to do. Okay, so was that bar staying close to the body throughout? Was there a slight pull on the bar when my arms nice and long? Was the weight in the center of the foot, or was I coming onto my heels a little bit too soon through the second pull? These are the things that you want to try and work on. And if anything here, as you're sort of just like chilling, I would really spend the time to sort of like visually and mentally run through how that lift wants to feel. So it could sort of just be like without any weight, just getting into that start position. How does it feel? And trying to work on like, how does it feel in my feet? What does my body feel from this? And trying to tell myself how that next lift is going to go. Okay. And then the step 2 is now I'm getting myself prepared. Okay. So I'm standing behind that bar, a few steps away. I'm going to tighten up my belt. I might put some chalk on my hands. But here now, rather than thinking about all these different areas, I'm going to try and bring it down to the 3 main keywords that I want to that's really going to sort of help me execute the best lift. Okay, so it might well be like flat feet, drive hard. Okay, and that is what I'm sort of telling myself as I'm sort of getting set up here, and I'm actively thinking about like, how do I want it to go? I want to really think about driving through my feet, keeping my arms nice and long, and I'm going to really drive hard through that first pull. And they're the three things that I'm thinking about as I now take that step to the bar. Now, when you are setting up that grip, you're on that bar, you're literally seconds away from going. How I like to treat this is think of it as like a blank canvas, okay? We want to clear the mind of all these different thoughts. We literally want to think about one thing: drive hard, push through the foot, whatever that may be, whatever that one cue is that really resonates with you, that really sort of like gets you switched up to hit that good lift. That is the last thing that you want to think about before you go 3, 2, 1 and execute it. Okay. So what I try and tell my lifters is, as you set up there, think of that blank canvas. Don't let any thoughts come into that mind. And the one way to try and prevent all these sort of like negative thoughts coming into your head is literally count down, hook grip, and count down from say 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Because what that allows you to do, you're now thinking about the numbers that is you're counting as you get ready to hit that lift, okay? And it's preventing you going, oh God, this is a really heavy weight. Am I going to be able to do this? Is it going to be a successful? Am I going to lose this bar? It prevents any of those thoughts, and it allows you to just keep that head nice and clear and execute the best lift that you can. So question number 3, how should I structure my weekly training to maximize gains? Okay. So again, this is quite quite a hard question to answer, because this is, you know, totally individualized. Okay. So how should I structure my weekly training is what we're sort of going through here is, what is your structure looking like at the moment? Okay. When do you feel best to train, whether that be an evening or a morning, or are you able to train in the middle of the day? Okay. So for the most of us, we've got work, family, social life, and other stresses that are going to affect our training program. So we need to make sure that our training program just fits in around everything else that we've got. Okay. So whether that be like, I can guarantee 2 sessions, or I can guarantee 2 sessions and there's one going to be an optional session, or I can guarantee to do 3 sessions, always choose the thing that you can guarantee. Okay. So if you can guarantee 3 sessions and potentially this optional session, you're going to plan for 3 sessions and then have a few exercises that you might do on that 4th optional session. Okay. So for me, really, like, I know for a fact, no matter how busy that week is, I can guarantee I can get 3 sessions in. Okay. But so if I get my 3 sessions in, winner, and if I've got some extra time towards the end of the week, that's when I can start to look at getting that 4th session in. Now, probably a lot like me, a lot of people would find that if you plan for 4 sessions, but you know it's going to be quite touch and go to get that 4th in on a regular basis, it starts to really demotivate you, and it's really then quite hard to keep on going each week when you know that you're not getting that full program in. So whatever you do, you always want to make sure that the way you structure your program is something that is attainable and manageable on the easiest and the hardest of weeks. Okay. So once you know how many sessions that you're going to complete, whether that be a 3 sessions a week, you might then look at doing a snatch session, a clean session, and a jerk session. Or it might well be that you're going to look at snatches on one session, clean and jerks on the next, and then we're going to sort of look at some sort of like consolidation session or a power development session. So the way that you would choose which structure or which style of program that you're going to run on those sessions all depends really on those areas that you are struggling with. Okay, so it might well be that I'm really struggling to get the speed underneath the bar. I'm spending a lot of time riding that bar into that bottom position. So I might look at a snatch specific session so I can look at the primary movements that are going to counteract me riding that bar down into the bottom position, and the same for the clean and jerks. And then my 3rd session might well be work from the hands. So I'm really trying to drive and focus on hitting that bottom position, or it might well be that I'm going to spend some time on the blocks to really dial in a better second pull that is going to enable me to hit that bottom position. Okay, so really it all depends on the areas that you are struggling with. Okay, so what I've put in the bottom of the description for this video is just the link to my blog posts where I've actually spoken about identifying your individual weaknesses. Okay, and we can look at that from the key performance indicators, so how your technique looks compared to the most efficient ways that we can move the bar, and things such as bar path, okay, and the drop displacement, okay, so the point where you reach the bar to the lowest point that you receive it. So obviously we're looking now in a lot more detail, but those are the things that we've got to sort of analyze to make sure that that program then is specific to us and we're going to get the very best out of it. So from there, how often should I test my 1 rep max? So again, with this, really, I don't think there's a right or wrong. And again, as if you are quite new to the sport, you're just learning this sport, you'd probably have potentially a 1 rep max or some sort of max test quite regularly. If you're somebody, or when I say quite regularly, it might be every sort of like 4 weeks, we're going to sort of work towards a max lift, but maintaining good quality. If you're a lifter that is a seasoned lifter, now you're looking to really squeeze out those extra couple of kilos, you might have less 1 rep max tests just because you need more time spent at building the foundations to get you to lift that one rep. And obviously this sort of will feed into one of the next questions, but with any sort of program, whether you're a seasoned lifter or like a beginner, there should always be some sort of like test that you can put in your program. So it might well be after week 1 to week 4, I'm going to start to build up to, say, a 4 rep max snatch or a clean and jerk double. So that then gives me an indicator whether I'm ready to go into that next phase of my program. Okay, so the way that I look at this is when I start to go from the hypertrophy phase and go into my strength phase, I'm looking for my lifters to sort of get towards hitting 5 reps at snatches or 5 snatches at 80%. That now sort of tells me that we're in that ballpark figure to go into our strength phase and have some sort of test after that strength phase, whether that's 6 to 8 weeks, where we're going to sort of go, okay, we're going to be around that 85, 87% for a heavy triple or a heavy double clean and jerk. Okay, so every single cycle should have some sort of indicator / goal to know that we are on the right track, we are making progress. Okay, next question. So how do I maintain proper form under heavy loads? So again, very similar to what I've just spoken about there, is if your technique is breaking down at certain percentages, so 80%, for example, that highlights to me that we need to probably do more work around that 75 to 80% before we bring it up into that next cycle. Okay, so technique is always going to break down as we get to that maximal load, but it shouldn't really break down below, say, 90 to 95% of our 1 rep max. And if it is, that's just highlighting that we need to spend more time in the areas it breaks down to get more volume under our belt before we sort of progress. Okay, and when we are playing with maximal load, so it is going to break down, a 1 rep max isn't necessarily always going to look the prettiest lift. We are going to experience technical breakdown, but that then highlights what our next training program is going to be based around. Okay, so how do I maintain proper form under heavy loads? Really, we're going to make sure that we've got volume under a select amount. So for example, 70 to 80%, I can hit reps at 80% and technique is perfect. That then gives me that the nod to go up towards 80 to 85%. If I'm teetering towards 85% and we're starting to see it break down, we might spend a little bit more time around this 85%, look at intensifying these movements. So it might well be that I'm starting to have a slight bend at as I get that bar past my knee. So I might start to look at doing 1 clean and 2 hangs, just to really try and to solidify keeping those arms long through the second pull. And then once I can start to see that bleeding in at 85%, then that sort of is the nod to sort of work up again. So we always, again, very similar, we want these little tests to identify whether we are ready for that next cycle, because there's no point really going through the cycle and just allowing these things to sort of fall apart and not necessarily adjusting them as we build that weight. Okay, we always want to adjust and correct these things before we move into that next phase. Otherwise, it's a losing battle as we get towards the end of the strength phase and going into our peak phase where we're looking to get to a 1 rep max. If we're failing reps, or if we're failing triples around 85%, we're really, really going to struggle to hit doubles at 90 and singles at 95, 97% of our current 1 rep max. And obviously that just shows that our program hasn't necessarily drilled in the movements and the technical changes that we are looking to make before we move into our program. So from there, let's have a look at the next question. So what cues should I focus on to improve my bar path? So improving bar path, okay? The one thing with our bar path is if this is the vertical reference line here, and again, I've got a blog post where I've spoken about vertical reference, the bar path, is that I'm facing this way. I want the bar to come this way or towards me through this first phase and the second pull, okay? As it reaches my hip crease, there's going to be some ever so slight loop at the top of this movement, okay? As a general rule of thumb, there's different ways we can move the bar, but optimally, the bar is going to come towards us through the first and the second pull, and there's going to be some sort of, it's going to reach the vertical reference line or just come away from us as we go into that turnover underneath that bar. If that is not the case, and what we're finding is the bar is coming out from when we pull the bar off the floor to our knee, and the bar then is staying very, very close, or it's staying this side of the vertical reference line as we go through the second pull, that is because the bar is coming away from us. So the things that we want to try and work on here is trying to think about that bar is going to touch as much of our leg as possible. We want that bar to glide up the shin and stay in contact with our thighs, okay? I'm not looking for you to take the skin off your shin, but it should be brushing the shin as closely as possible. If it's not, we can almost guarantee that the bar is coming away from us, which is going to then tip us forwards, and then we're going to lose the position to get it against our thighs. So what we always find is within the Olympic lifts, if the first phase of the lift is out, we can almost guarantee everything else is going to be out. So we've really got to make sure within that first phase of the lift, so from the floor to the hang position just above our knee, the weight is in the midfoot, the bar stays against our shin, so then we are in a better position to keep that bar against the thighs through the second pull, okay? And again, as we come through the thighs, we want to meet the top part of the thigh in the cleans or reach the hip crease in the snatches. And then we can sort of almost guarantee that we are keeping it into a good position for the bar path, okay? So how do I know I am making good progress with my Olympic lifts? So again, this is sort of very similar to the other questions, really. We want to make sure that we have got some tests in that program. So it might well be a 5-week program. Week 1 to week 5 is hypertrophy, and we're going to be working from 67 to sort of 77%, okay? So when we get to 77%, the week after that, we might have some sort of testing protocol where we're going to be going for 1 snatch, 2 hang snatches times 2. So those 6 total reps there. And the reason why I'm doing 1 snatch, 2 hang, 1 snatch, 2 hang is because I'm looking to keep the bar closer to my thigh position and improve the power generation through that second pull, okay? And we've got a 6 rep max. So I might start to look at it and go, okay, what's the maximum load that I can take for these 6 reps, okay? And I'm hoping that it's going to be around that sort of 80 to 82%. Now that gives me a really good indicator that I'm ready then for that next block of work, okay? And that might well be our 6 to 8 week strength cycle. And at the end of that, we want to be sort of around triple snatches or double clean and jerks, really trying to push towards that 90% barrier before then we start to build into our peaking phase. And our peaking phase, we might have a 1 rep max that we're expecting is going to be the same as our 1 rep max or a little bit more. Before then we start to dial it back in for another 2 weeks before then we jump back out for another 1 rep max where we then can take it to that next level. So with our program, really, there should be opportunities within that where we can test our max load for a certain amount of reps that gives us a good indicator whether we're on track to hit a 1 rep max at the end of that training cycle. So how can I fix an early arm bend during my lift? So an early arm bend in the snatch and the clean is down to a few areas that are quite easy to fix. Okay, the first one is as I'm driving off the floor, I'm pulling the bar with my arms. So the first thing that I want to try and think about here, if anything, is squeezing my triceps so my arm stays locked out as I set up for the snatch, and the same for the clean. That's going to make sure the weight stays in the center of the foot. I'm driving through the floor, and there's less of a chance of me trying to pull the bar with my arms, okay? And then the second area that potentially causes you to have an early arm bend is that you've not taken the slack out of the bar. So as that bar is resting on the floor, if you hold on to that bar and shake it, that bar will have a little bit of disturbance, okay? So this here is the plate, okay, and the bar sits here, and the bar will rattle either side of the plate. So all we're looking to do is drive the bar into the top part of the plate as I get ready to go. That now takes the slack out of the bar. I then contract my arms. I'm in such a super strong position that when I take the weight off the floor, there's no chance of me bending my arms. If I don't take the slack out the bar, the plate is here, the bar sits here. This is what happens. It hits the top of the plate, which causes me to have that shudder and a slight bend in my arms. We've really got to make sure that the arms are locked. I'm taking the slack out the bar. Those two ways are probably the easiest quick fixes that we can execute in our session to prevent any early arm bend. So next one, what are the best drills to work on speed under the bar? So when it comes to speed under the bar, okay, this is down to, again, it's technical. The bar could be, we are basically pulling the bar up as opposed to thinking about getting that bar into a position where we can drop underneath it. So the bar is away from us. Or we are pulling the bar so hard overhead, okay, that there's tension in the body. So the movements that I would look at here are hang variations. So if we're not finding that we are getting top part hip contact, or sorry, we're not having hip contact in the snatch, or we're not having the contact point of the top part of the thigh in the clean, I would start to look at high hang variations and really getting to the point of finding that vertical dip and jump, okay? If you are finding hip crease contact and top bar contact or top thigh contact in the clean, I would then look at the hang position, okay, and make sure that we're really thinking about like pulling that bar hard into the top part of the thigh or the hip crease. And as we do so, trying to pull that bar around the body, preventing it from coming away from us, okay? As soon as that bar comes away from us, it's going to start to reduce the speed that is on the bar, that's placed on the bar, that then is going to make it harder for us to get underneath it, which causes us to try and pull this bar higher for us to get underneath, okay? So we need to try and work on hang variations and then bring it down to the floor. We could also look at working from the blocks to keep it into that static position so we can really try and work the rate of force development through that second pull, or we could set the bars a little bit lower. So we could have a low block where it's just below the knee. So we can work the transition past the knee and again, rallying it into the top part of the thigh or the hip crease. Those are probably the best sort of movements we can sort of look at here. Again, if we're struggling with speed underneath the bar, the one thing that I would look at is how you are gripping the bar. Okay, so we talk about hook grip a lot. Hook grip is really important. We've got to hook grip. So, but the idea with hook grip is that we're not looking to hold on to that bar for dear life. If I'm holding on to this bar of dear life, I'm basically not utilizing the benefits of the hook grip. The idea of the hook grip, the thumb creates the hook, and my fingers on top are staying, I'm holding on to the bar, obviously, but I don't want to squeeze down. I want to try and hold it as loose as I possibly can. And that's going to allow that bar to move in my hand. If I hold it really, really, really tight, that's then going to cause tension in my forearm and in my wrist, which is going to then prevent that turnover. Okay. And without that turnover, we end up straight away losing that speed into that bottom position. So look at hang variations and block variations, as well as your grip position, because your grip can make a massive difference to the outcome of the snatches and the cleans. So so next question, should I do pulls in my program, and how often? Again, when it comes to the pulls, okay, it's a tough one. I'm not a huge fan of snatch pulls and clean pulls. I do them for my seasoned lifters, but it's not something that I put into a program for a beginner or someone that has not got very much experience in Olympic lifting. Now, the reason why I do that is if we do pulls from the start and we haven't got very much experience with pulls, we end up naturally pulling the bar, okay? Trying to get the height on the bar. And that is not how the bar moves in Olympic lifting. So what I would do instead is look at snatch grip and clean grip variations. So driving through the similar positions that I would hit in my snatch and clean, but coming to the power position and pausing there, okay? And what this is really going to utilize is making sure that we're drilling and instilling the perfect ways of moving the bar from the floor to that power position, keeping it close to the shins and the thighs, but also making sure that the weight stays in the center of the foot. What we normally find when we go into snatch pulls and clean pulls too soon in our training program is that it really tries and creates the lifter to pull the bar, but also come up onto their toes too soon. And it really it then puts bad habits into our Olympic lifts, and it just slows down our progress and our understanding of how we want that bar to move in the snatch and the clean. So, next question. How can I increase my core strength for better stability during my lifts? Now, core strength is core strength. How can I increase my core strength? We can look at different movements again. We can look at body weighted exercises. We can look at weighted movements. So that we've got to treat the core just like any other muscle in the body. If we wanted a bigger squat, we would train squats, okay? If I wanted bigger biceps, I'd do bicep exercises. If I want a bigger chest, I'm going to do a lot of bench press, okay? And it's the same here. Core strength, the core is a muscle. So we need to train that muscle the same as any other muscle. So I might start to look at doing plank variations, and I'm going to use time as a factor of whether I'm improving, okay? I might start to look at weighted side bends or weighted GHD sit-ups. It could well be hanging knee raises or windmills as movements where I can go, okay, and now I can take that next weight up. That means my obliques, my core strength is a little bit stronger because I can withstand more weight. It's the same as any other muscle, and we've just got to treat it the same as how we would want any other muscle to increase in strength or size, okay? Load it, get some weight behind it, and increase that weight over a set amount of time. And then a question here is, can you simplify nutrition for lifting? Aim is to reduce fat and gain muscle to lift better. How much protein is enough? Okay. Now, again, first thing that I would say is head to the link in the description below. I've got a blog post where I've really tried to break down nutrition as much as possible, but I don't want to spend 20-30 minutes here talking about nutrition when it's all in the blog post there, and then at least then you've got a visual and you can take something away from that. But really, when it comes to lifting, we've got to choose what is the goal, okay? Is it that we're trying to reduce fat? Because if the goal is I want to reduce my fat, we probably want to be in a calorie deficit. If the goal, if the goal or the overarching goal is to gain muscle, we probably want to be closer to a calorie maintenance or calorie surplus. Okay. Yes, you can do both, but they're both sort of counteracting each other. What I would say is if you want to sort of, maintain our weight but gain a little bit of strength, we want to probably keep our calories at maintenance level. And over time, you'll probably find that you'll reduce your body fat and you'll slowly build muscle. Okay. But really, we've got to look at like what is the overall goal that you're looking to achieve, okay, rather than having two goals here and then both trying to fight for what it is. Because if we're in a calorie deficit, we're obviously not really going to be building muscle. But if we're in a calorie surplus, we're not really going to be reducing our fat, okay. And then how much protein is enough? You probably, as like a general rule of thumb, you probably want to be around 1.5 grams to 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So, for example, if I'm 100 kilos, I'm going to be around about 150 to 200 grams of protein. And again, I've got it all in the blog there. I've given you a total breakdown. If you head over to my website, www.coachoates.co.uk, I've got a calorie calculator on there where it's going to sort of work out the calories that are suited to your goal and what you should be aiming for to reach that goal. Okay, but the thing that I would really say here is, what is your goal? Is it to lose fat or is it to build muscle, or which one is more important? Look at to have that goal over a 15-week period before we start to change it. So we might start to look, okay, I want to reduce my fat while I'm working my technique because it's lightweight. I'm not necessarily going to be building maximal strength. So I can start to keep myself down to a very small calorie deficit or calorie maintenance. But if your goal is, no, I want to build the weight, that is the most important thing. I would probably say that you want to be calorie maintenance at a minimum or a calorie surplus, so we can gain muscle and get stronger. And at the end of that 15-week cycle, then we can start to make that cut. But I would definitely wouldn't try and both do them at the same time. They're sort of cancelling out each other as they sort of go. And then our final question here is, how do we access your beginner information? I'm still not quite confident in my initial setup behind the bar. Okay. So if you haven't already, I've got a weightlifting starter pack where we go down, or I explain the grip position for the snatch, the clean and the jerk, the foot position where we want to be in the split jerk, and how we can start to go from snatch grip position into an overhead squat and the variations of our overhead squat if we're struggling with overhead squat mechanics. And we can then start to look at the very basics and the foundational movements of those Olympic lifts. If you've already got that, you've gone through it, you know where your snatch grip position is, but you're really struggling to take it to that next level. How on earth do I get into a snatch? I'm struggling with the high hang movement that I can put the link in below, and I've done a video on that. Really, what we probably want to start looking at is some sort of tailored program where you are working with a coach, taking out the guessing game, taking out the confusion of what is that next step, and having a coach that's going to sort of tell you like, all right, okay, this is where you're going wrong. This is what we need to work on. And this is how we're going to get from A to B. Okay. And what I can do there is in the description below, I've put a link to my coaching page where you can sort of just put in there that you're interested in coaching. We can organize a chat. We can analyze your movements, and then we can start to program the ultimate program that is specific to your individual needs, that is going to take you from A, B, and then B to C and C to D. Okay, we want a progressive program, and we can do that within a sort of a 12 to 15-week block, just because we're taking out that guessing game. We're taking out that time to sort of ponder around, am I in the right snatch grip position? Is this an overhead squat? Is this where I need to be? Am I getting low enough? Is the bar in the right position? Take out all that confusion and just get straight down to like the nitty gritty. This is what the coach says. This is how I'm going to take it to that next level. So obviously I've put that link in the description below. Okay. We just got any questions in the chat? Don't think we have, no. So guys, that is the end of our Q&A. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, let's wait for the next one.